so much for having me. It truly is such a pleasure to be here. I feel really honored to be able to share some of our journey with you and to hopefully give you some insights about what it's been like to build technology with a design background, but also to give you a little bit of background on myself. I was raised by a single mother, and she had me when she was 32 years old. And I am also one of seven children on my father's side. He had 4 different marriages. And my mother was from wife number 3. And when she left my father, she had $1,000 in the bank. And she placed one ad in the newspaper to start her design school. And with that one ad, she got 26 students. 26 students who she has been teaching, not that same group, but she's now been teaching for 30 years. And in her first year of business, her best friend, his name's John Henry, he mortgaged his house for her because she couldn't make the rent. We now have a library dedicated to this man, and he was actually there when I was delivered. And so I do have this strange relationship with design because I was quite literally brought up in a design school. But don't get me wrong, I had my rebellion, and I went the other way for a long time, and then I really came back to this principle of design, and I truly believe in it. So today, I'm going to talk about this gap, but I'm also going to talk about good vibrations when design and technology touch. It's an interesting phrase. I think good vibrations has almost been overused. It's become a little cliched. Although when you think about it the way I do, you start to think about it a little differently. It is that intersection for me of where design and technology can meet. And I'd like you to take a second and just think that in fact everything in life is vibration. You, your human body, the objects around you, the animals, the plants, they all give off a vibration. But now that I've talked a little bit about my past, I want to talk about how I see the future and how I see vibration and its role in it. So I'm going to show you a little video.
We experience our world through our senses. Sound. Sight. Touch. Touch defines the boundaries of our bodies and connects us to our surroundings. Warmth, texture, movement. Your senses can ground you or transport you. What if a song played out across your body? What if every touchdown touched you? What if your skin helped you stay mindful of yourself? We're creating a universal language that connects us through our skin. We're tapping into a primal part of the human experience, reimagining our oldest way of knowing ourselves, each other, and our world. Change is happening. Can you feel it?
Thank you. Can you tell that that's my voice? So I've thought a lot about this, and what I truly believe now more than ever is that it's our responsibility as designers to design for the things that make us truly human. And that means that technology will be involved because we do have a dependency on technology. And if you truly look at everyone in this room, you know that they have an extension, which is their cell phone. And whether they have 1 or 2, or whether it's your laptop, you have a dependency on this technology. So it's not necessarily part of what makes us human, but it is part of our experience. So I want us to think about what are the things that make us truly human. Things like intimacy, things like shared experience, things like discovery, things like self-awareness. And those are the areas that I choose to spend my life designing for. So this was my first ever product. I realized that having half-naked people on the screen this large is a little provocative, but so was the product. I made vibrating knickers for couples in long-distance relationships. Thank you. Also known as teledildonics. You should never repeat that word. It had its phase in the 90s and it never should have come back, but that's how I spent the first year of my career. And we did this in partnership with Durex, and we had this hilarious experience of figuring out where and how to place electronics in very intimate pieces of clothing. Yes, there was a cell phone involved, you can see it in that picture, and you would stimulate your partner over vast distances, and you could create sensations, and you could get them excited. But what we realized is actually it was far more than just selling sex, which of course we know works. It was actually about building a language of intimacy on the body. And I think we've all seen this stat before. We've seen that 90% of all communication is nonverbal, which means the way you've crossed your legs, the way your hands are placed on your body, the way your shoulders are either slumped over or rolled back, actually communicates an enormous amount about you. And actually, just before this presentation, I did my own exercises to get big, to do my power poses, to shake my arms out. I'm actually serious, because that says so much about who I am on stage. And it's work. This is not a simple thing. This is an ongoing process. And yet, it's a part of the design system that's often ignored. We forget about using this as a powerful form of communication, and we've forgotten about using it on the body. So my hilarious journey, honestly, and I even met Hugh Hefner at one point. Yep, I went to the Playboy Mansion, spent some time in the grotto. I was fully clothed. But it was an amazing journey of realizing how design is actually gendered as well, which I think is quite a big topic. The way these objects were shaped on a male body versus a female body, the way men and women interacted with the software, enormously different. And I will share one hilarious story because I find this really entertaining. When we would show the software and the app had a female form on it, and we'd show it to a man, a heterosexual man, and he would stimulate one spot, and he'd go buzz, 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 buzz. When we showed the same form, the female form, to a woman, also a heterosexual woman, she would move it around. She would create this interesting sensation on the body, and that was obviously more stimulating. So we realized in this moment that it actually, thank you, it was a language of intimacy on the body that hadn't yet been explored. So what we believed, and of course this is part of the story we all tell ourselves, but what we believed at this time was that porn started the internet and Funderwear started smart clothing. So the gap that we were looking at was really what makes us fundamentally human, and how do we do that? So we look as anthropologists, we study people, we take time, we see what and how and who they spend their time with and how they spend their time, what are their habits and patterns and routines. And then we add design and design thinking and human-centric design, and as we said, we're not designing for dogs, although some people are. And we decided that there was more than just sexuality that we could design for. And our second ever product was a partnership with a large sport company called Foxtel. It's also known as Fox Sports. They wanted us to create a fan jersey that was connected to live sports data. Now, what that meant is that you could download the app and you could select which team you would like to follow. And then having selected that team, you could feel the sensations of that team live as you're watching the game. Now that's whether you're at home or whether you're in the stadium. You could select where you're watching as well and on what channel. And then you would feel the replications of heartbeat, the buildup of adrenaline. We've even worked on a version where you can get chills down your spine and nervousness in your belly. And we realized that there is this language beyond intimacy that also exists on the body. And it was about that shared experience. You could also send sensations to your friends if you wanted them to have a big impact. You could send that. And it was all connected through social media. So in 2016, we won a Wearable Award at Showroom Privé in Paris. This was also while I was doing a Super Bowl event. And I can tell you where I would have rather have been. I would have preferred to be in Paris. But we did a partnership with Bud Light and with Pepsi at Super Bowl 50, where we asked their audience to try on our jerseys and tell us how they felt, and to explain what different moments of a Super Bowl game were important to them. Was it a red card? Was it when they were in the red zone? Was it a touchdown? And we really did this all as an experiment. And in fact, when we started the company, it was called Wearable Experiments, because we truly believe that life is an experiment. You've got to test and learn and iterate and try again, test and learn and iterate, try again. So I did another experiment when I was in Manchester, it was a very interesting experience. It was with 3,000 children, and it was for Manchester City, and they have this weekend called the Citizens Weekend, and we tested the jersey and we played a game of memory to see how much they could remember the vibration sequences. So we'd paired children with the app and we'd said, okay, for the first time, you can experience what it's like to receive a red card or to score a goal or to miss a goal. And then we would test it, and then we'd walk away and say, now I want you to tell me what sensations these vibrations mean to you. And they got it every single time. And it was flabbergasting to me. There was no way I expected that language would be so easy to understand. Now I'm going to say something that is a little bit wild, but the more and more we understand and research this, the more we're seeing that the first form of communication you have when you're in the womb is actually vibration. This is before you've even developed ears. So we've now started to explore even deeper. What does it look like? What does it feel like to own and understand your data? Now, in America, they call it data, so I often get in trouble. But again, this is about how it makes you feel. This isn't about quantifying your steps. This isn't about seeing numbers. This isn't about seeing colors. This is about changing the way you feel. So when we started to explore this, we were actually named as one of Fast Company's most innovative companies in sports. A huge, huge humbling honor. And in fact, this year, we were named as the Design and Technology Award for Fashion Group International. Now that was a foundation that was started by Eleanor Roosevelt. And it was started by her because she believed that women in the fashion industry and in the design industry needed to be reflected upon, they needed to be celebrated, they needed to be supported. So this award actually happens on October 25th in New York City, and Vera Wang is winning the Lifetime Achievement Award that night as well. Oh, thank you. What's funny about this is that finally the fashion industry is understanding that data is really important. And I think now data plays a bigger role in my life than it ever has before. But that was a new learning. I had to learn to appreciate it. I had to learn to love it. And so last year, we released a new product, of which I'm going to show you a little video. So this is Nadi X. Now, Nadi means flow, and the X stands for coming from the future. And there are integrated accelerometers through the hips, the knees, and the ankles that understand your body's orientation. And then there's haptic feedback built throughout the hips and the knees and the ankles that guide you where to focus with vibration on the body. And it's so that you can practice yoga on a mountaintop, whether you're rolling out of bed into downward dog, the only way you want to. This is entirely about you, and it's not about necessarily staring at a teacher in a classroom when it's really, really hot outside. This is my own particular practice, at least. I'm going to show you exactly how it works. So we have a little device called the pulse. Now the pulse sits just behind your left knee, and that is the one spot on the body that doesn't get in the way practicing yoga. You can imagine, I had to test this on hundreds of different body shapes across 4 different continents to make sure I got it right. Then you connect via Bluetooth. Now the Bluetooth and the battery is also in the pulse. And then you set your personalized vibration strength. And believe it or not, 99% of all of our customers use the most intense. And it is because it is this really interesting, powerful form of communication on the body. Then you can either go the entire way through the list, and that's 40 minutes of yoga, going step by step, quite like an Iyengar practice, or you can choose which poses you want to work on. Then the last step of each pose, the accelerometers, their values are processed in the phone, and we determine whether you made it into the pose or whether you should go back and have another look and give it another go. So this is the pulse. Meet Mr. Pulse. The pulse, you double tap to wake up. And it is this interesting place that no one expects when they first put on the pants. You get an instruction about where to focus, but once you lie flat, it sits just in the arc of your knee. And even when you're doing tree pose, it sits just behind your foot. It's one of those places on the body that truly changed our lives because we never expected it to work. What this does is it speaks to a version of the future that I really want to live in. And that version of the future is entirely about enchanted objects. Now, I'm going to say some very lofty comments about the future, but I truly believe that you as designers and technologists and builders can actually get us there. Now, we've seen versions of the future that look a little bit like Minority Report, where we have screens dominating everything and we're all sort of tied to them at all times. The version of the future I believe in is actually every single object in the world will have its own ecosystem around it, powered by data, powered by technology, and they will have a personality. Now, those personalities will be decided by the designers, by the architects, and those personalities will be able to interact with us. And it'll be far more like a Disney film where we can create characters than it will be like Minority Report. Now, why do I believe in this and why do I choose to care? I believe that that version of the future can actually give us far more confidence. I believe it can actually give us far more convenience. And I believe that we can do it at a better cost. This was my true belief in building this product. But I really want you to believe in it. And I want you to start thinking about how that could change the way you approach design. So this is what's next for us. We're really focused on how we can move our technology into the upper body, how we can remind you to roll your shoulders back and down, how we can do guided vibrations for meditation, and then eventually how we can move into remote physiotherapy and remote monitoring. So that if it costs you, I'm not sure, $100,000 to get into a hospital appointment to have some sort of surgery, you can prevent that by actually taking awareness and checking in with your body. That number was probably a little high. Now, the reason we started looking at this is because there's a couple of big epidemics in the US, one of which is anxiety and depression, and the other one is obesity. And it's strange because in the last 10 years, Americans have actually spent more time, in fact, double the amount of time, in gyms, and they've spent more money, double the amount of money, on gyms. But if anxiety and depression is still up, and so is obesity, something is wrong. The model is broken. We're spending our money, we're spending our time, but we're not getting the effects. And that's a problem. So there's clearly a convenience issue here, and there's clearly a confidence issue here. Now, there are people in this space. There are amazing people in this space, some companies that I very much look up to. If you haven't heard of Peloton, it's an at-home bike. There is a new product out there called Mirror. And Mirror is that giant screen that you have that is your personal trainer. That's not the version of the future I choose to live in, which is why I design other objects. But there are also beautiful design companies that care, and I implore you to be one of those companies as well. Now, the other reason I focused on this space is because, well, in fact, we didn't know this at the time, but this year they announced that the haptics industry will be worth $23 billion by 2023. Now, that's not so far away, but it does mean that we're a little early. But it also means this is a really exciting space to be designing for. Now, I want to leave you with some of my big takeaways, and actually this is a big part of my process. It's when you're thinking about design, how do you design for all 5 senses? Now, that means that I actually smelt my product before I released it to make sure that it didn't smell terrible, and this is because I've smelt other smart apparel companies, and it does smell terrible. They had boiled the plastic at the wrong temperature, and it reeked. And this is something that you really do have to think about. Smell is our fastest instinct. In fact, touch is second, then sound, and then sight. And yet we design for the visuals first and foremost. I really would love you to design for discovery, because as humans, that is something that is fundamental to who we are, and that's something that we really enjoy doing. And then I want you to design for change. And I have two really interesting examples around this. For us, because our apparel is now powered by software, we can download new versions of your pants, new features, new skills. It means that you can now have a subscription service where you can create your own playlists of yoga poses and then share them with the world. It also means that we have to think about how sustainable our products are. So we insist that every single one of our pants, at the end of its life, whether that's you ripped it in half or whether that's it went through too many washes. By the way, we're the only company in the world who lasts 30 washes and tumble dries their smart apparel. But we implore you to return your products to us because we actually break down the electronics to turn them into other things. And that is something that you have to be thinking about. There's no doubts about this. Now, these are my final three for you. Don't make money for assholes. They exist. They're everywhere. Thank you. Mic drop. There is too much money in the world not to be doing it with good people. The people are everything. And I am by no stretch my entire business. I have some of the most intelligent people, in fact, people far more intelligent than me working around me who I really couldn't do any of this without. And the people are actually the most important thing. So don't let assholes come into your life, and if they do, flick them immediately. Then ask empathetic questions. Now that means know your audience, know yourself, and truly use empathy as a business tool. And then the last one is to listen, truly, truly listen, and don't listen to respond, but listen to absorb, and then feel. And that means ask yourself how you feel every single day and build things that help you feel. My name is Billie Whitehouse. I am a designer, a consultant, a creative director, a founder, and I'm really humbled to be here. Thank you very much.